Let's get going. Good evening, everyone. Let's call this meeting of the City Council of the City of Marysville to order today, Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019 at 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mr. Simmons?
Here.
Mr. Buttacavoli?
Here.
Ms. McKenzie? Here. Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Samayoa?
Here. Let's go to item 3. I'd like everyone to stand and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to ask the city manager if there are any changes to our agenda, Ms. Brown.
There are none.
Would I like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Motion by the Vice Mayor. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0. Is there an echo going?
Yeah.
Hello, hello? I think it's to me. Let's move to item 6, presentations and commendations. We'll start with 6A. We have a presentation by Mr. Brandon Sanders of Pacific Gas and Electric Company going over wildfire safety programs. Sir?
Thank you, Mayor Samoya, council members. Very grateful to be here today before you to present on PG&E's Community Wildfire Safety Program. My name is Brandon Sanders. I'm your local public affairs representative. My first time presenting to this council, I must say I really love the chambers. They're very pretty with all the woodwork in the ceiling. I really like that. I'm a big fan of the visual aesthetic here. So
Thank you.
So really what I'm here today to share with you is a variety of actions that PG&E has taken in light of what's occurred in 2017 and 2018. All of you, I'm sure, are keenly aware of the devastation that's occurred through various large devastating wildfires, and PG&E's acknowledged that we as a company need to be doing more, and we are. And I'm going to be sharing with you very specific detail on the actions that we're taking to protect our customers and communities in Yuba County and the City of Marysville. So we have taken several additional steps to further enhance the safety of our system. That's really being done in 3 parts. The first of those is around wildfire monitoring and intelligence. I'll be going into greater detail on these. These are sort of the high-level subject matters. The second is new and enhanced safety measures. There's quite a bit of activity out there, not just in the city, but out in the upcountry around wildfire safety. Additionally, we're doing a lot around system hardening and resiliency, and I will get into greater detail on these. The first additional action that we've taken in light of what's occurred in recent years is the establishment of our Wildfire Safety Operations Center. This is a state-of-the-art facility in our San Francisco general office that is staffed 24/7, 365 by emergency management professionals, firefighting professionals and retired firefighters, meteorologists, weather experts, electric utility experts, and the like. It's essentially something you would anticipate seeing at, say, Cal OES out in Rancho Cordova. It's a very high-tech, all-encompassing operations center, working closely in coordination with CAL FIRE, local fire districts, NOAA, the National Weather Service, and others. Additionally, we are increasing our visibility into the field by installing weather stations. Those are primarily in the foothill and mountain elevations. This is going to allow us a better understanding of what's actually occurring on the ground in specific locations. So we won't have to rely as heavily on meteorological forecasts. We can actually see in real time what's occurring on the ground. And we have installed several of those in the foothill communities of Yuba County, and we'll be deploying up to 1,300 of those by 2022. The nice thing about those weather stations is that data is publicly available. You can see there's a website there, mesowest.utah.edu. That is available to anyone, anywhere in the world, really, to see what the weather conditions are like. And that has really enhanced our ability to make decisions during wildfire weather conditions. Additionally, we have installed high definition cameras at ridge tops and mountain tops that are going to allow us sort of a lens into the landscape and be able to detect early any ignitions that occur. There is one currently installed in Yuba County. It is on Loman Ridge at Ridge Road. One of the main threats to our system, sort of in a general sense, is the vegetation management piece. Most of the ignitions we see coming off of our system are due to vegetative contact with our conductors. So we have enhanced our vegetation management work in a number of ways. The first of those is we have staffed up substantially, increasing our workforce through contract resources to accomplish veg management tasks on a faster time frame and more expansive scope. That includes looking to go beyond that 4-foot radial clearance that's mandated by the state, taking that out to up to 12 feet. There's a number of reasons for that. One of those is to reduce the risk of limbs overhanging the lines falling down. But additionally, we want to accommodate for the growth of that tree over the course of a year, because the last thing we want to do is be entering people's properties multiple times throughout the year, disturbing the ground, disturbing the customer, and essentially that's also a greater impact to ratepayers if we're having to make multiple entries. So we're trying to expand those clearances in the interest of wildfire safety and also reducing customer impact.
Is that also in urban areas?
We definitely are still doing all of the routine work in urban areas, and if there are opportunities to increase those clearances, we're seeking those out. It's a cooperative effort with our customers because we need to come to agreement with the affected homeowner or landowner or business. We aren't going to just go in and cut down a swath of trees without having some sort of dialogue with that homeowner or landowner. That's important to us to be sure that what we're doing is acceptable to the customer, but also meets the standard that we're required to meet. So
But if we see, our public safety sees something that looks fairly dangerous, they contact you, would that be the route?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm always available to the council. I've been out here quite a bit doing a variety of these meetings, but yes, of course, you can either route your issue through Persephone, or Marty knows how to find me, or Chief Sachs, or anybody else, and I can route that. I would generally route that to the local vegetation management supervisor, who would then assign an ACRT inspector. ACRT are our contract arborists. They drive little white trucks with ACRT on the side, and then they would then roll that truck out to that location and do an assessment and write a prescription, and then a few weeks afterward, the veg management crew would come out and work those trees.
Yeah, thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
I noticed when they come out and prune these trees, they butcher them.
Yeah.
They really, really whack them away, and it really changes the profile of that tree and creates problems on the other side.
Right.
Who supervises that, and who checks that?
Well, it's driven by the standard, and so really
What's the standard?
It's this illustration you see on the screen here, where it needs to be a 4-foot radial clearance, but that 12-foot circle, again, is accommodating for the growth of that tree. But I field that question frequently, Councilmember Simmons, and we are looking for opportunities to remove trees entirely where appropriate, because there's an economy of scale there, right? As opposed to coming back and trimming that tree repeatedly year after year. If there's an opportunity for us to just remove it completely, and the customer or impacted landowner is receptive to that, then we would look for those opportunities also. So the whole sort of mentality around vegetation management is shifted towards the wildfire safety focus, and so we're looking for opportunities to enhance those clearances wherever possible.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Is there talk of maybe widening the span of the cross arms and the lines and so forth, or?
We are definitely doing that, and I can speak to that we're going to have a slide on the system hardening piece, and the wider cross arms are definitely a piece of that. So by putting in a longer or a wider, and generally going with steel or aluminum as opposed to wood cross arm, it's more resilient to wind and wildfire, but also that would require a greater clearance on the trees, absolutely.
Is there a delineation that's already marked out by research, or is it just a thought process at this moment?
Well, at this time, we're looking for opportunities where there's planned work. So every facility has a life cycle, right? So it has a useful lifespan, and then there's a point in time where we have to go replace it to bring it up to speed. And we're looking for those planned work or projected work where we would go back and do this hardening stuff. So I'll speak to that on a later slide in a little more detail.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for the questions. So one thing that I think is really one of the most impactful actions PG&E has taken since the 2017 wildfires is we have accelerated our inspection timeframes. So we have mandated inspection timeframes through the state. Those could be at intervals anywhere from 3 to 5 or 7 years, where we have to put eyes on a facility, a pole, a transformer, a transmission tower at regular intervals. And we have actually accelerated that to the point where now we have completed inspections on 98% of the transmission infrastructure in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 fire threat areas and 99% of the distribution infrastructure. We've found a lot of issues, and that's been in the media. There's been what we would generally characterize as high priority work, things that need to be immediately fixed, and there are resources in the field now doing that work on those locations. And then there are other issues like missing high voltage signs or chipping paint or things like that that we'll be sort of bundling and tackling once the immediate needs are addressed. But those wildfire safety inspections have occurred on an accelerated time frame and have really helped us render the system much safer than it would have been a year ago. This slide just speaks a little bit about the inspection process. So that we've pretty much thrown every tool in the toolbox at this. That goes from everything from actual visual inspections on the ground or climbing the poles. We have brought in drone professionals or professional drone operators from around the country to place drone eyes on all of the lattice towers, very large drones, almost the size of that table. And these things have high definition imagery equipment, and that is then sent back to an operations center where we have engineers going through each one of those images to identify any failing or damaged equipment. And also, you might, as elected officials, you might get a lot of inquiries about helicopters flying over people's neighborhoods, and 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a PG&E helicopter inspecting lines. Maybe not 9 times out of 10, but it's almost always a PG&E helicopter, unless it's a law enforcement helicopter or a medical helicopter. So this just speaks again to the system repairs that we're identifying as needed through these inspections, and we're accelerating that work. It has impacted other aspects of our work, but this is a priority for us, de-risking the system and really rendering it safe against wildfire threats. Where possible, we're trying to bundle all of that work, so coordinating with cities and counties to fold that into a single permit or a streamlined process so that we're not overwhelming your staff or the county staff with 800 job packages in a short time frame. So we're trying to lessen that impact to our local government partners through that bundling.
So for us here, it's also Cal Water, not just the city.
Sure, of course. And I know that on the customer side, there are communications ongoing with Cal Water, and there is interaction there as well. They should be, if they haven't yet, they should be receiving similar information as this from their account representative, the person who would essentially be their point of contact, as I am for the city or county.
Right.
So to Councilmember Hudson's question earlier, we are taking every opportunity to harden the system. That includes everything from replacing uncoated aluminum conductor with coated conductor or tree wire, as we call it. Putting in, when we go to replace a pole, using a thicker, taller, more deeply buried pole, widening the cross arms, replacing wood cross arms with steel or aluminum cross arms, taking every opportunity we can to render the system more resilient against high winds and wildfire threats. One thing that's of benefit, not so much to the city of Marysville, and it's not really needed in Marysville, but in some of the upcountry communities, we're looking to establish resilience zones where if you have a very isolated rural community where there's maybe a small main street with a gas station and a market and a church or a community hall, we're looking for opportunities to install what's called a portable or a pre-installed interconnection hub, which is essentially a large transformer where in the event of a large wildfire or a power shutoff, we could roll in a generator and keep those essential services energized throughout the event so that people still have access to gas, ice, food, those types of things.
Through the chair real quick. So got a question on your heavy transmission lines that don't necessarily run through the city of Marysville, right on the outskirts and Hallwood and so forth.
Sure.
During certain high temperature days and so forth, those lines sag pretty deep,
Yep.
Pretty close to the terrain and the vegetation. Is there consideration of changing the landscape or shortening the lines, stacking the towers taller? I mean, you're talking about preventive here, so I was just kind of curious.
Sure. So on those transmission lines, there is what's called a NERC standard, or I think it's a National Energy Reliability Corporation. It's a federal standard that we're held to, that mandates how much they can sag, how high they can be off the ground, how low they can be to the ground. And to my knowledge, we're compliant with that standard, but you are correct, there is substantial sag on the high voltage transmission lines during hot weather. We do patrol those on a regular basis with helicopters and aircraft. And that would have been part of the scope of the accelerated inspection programs, and so we would have had eyes on that equipment. If you have a specific location where you feel that the sag is dangerously low, you can let me know, but we have a very rigid national federally mandated standard that we have to adhere to in terms of how low those can be. Sure. But yes, that's definitely, I'm not an engineer, but that's part of like the science behind the system is as the current increases, the heat increases, and it causes that wire to loosen and sag a little bit between spans.
I mean, over the years, the wire expands and stretches a little bit further and so forth, so just kind of curious. I know that there's an operation of actually stacking the towers taller and all that kind of stuff, so wasn't sure if that's being an active thought process now.
That would be looked at, absolutely. If we found that we were out of compliance, we would definitely look to either reconductor that circuit with fresh conductor or alter the towers accordingly, whatever it would take to meet that NERC standard. And there is NERC work, it's kind of a funny expression, but there is NERC work occurring, I believe, in Sutter County right now to kind of address that type of issue. So we have eyes on that, absolutely. So throughout the system, we have a lot of automated equipment. These are essentially self-healing devices that if they sense a fault on the system, they will open a circuit breaker and immediately close it to test and ensure that it's still intact. These are great for the upcountry communities during winter weather when there's a lot of heavy snow load and branches falling and there's not a high fire threat. But the automated systems are definitely a risk factor during wildfire season. And so we have proactively disabled those in most of the high fire threat areas. So while you might have a longer duration outage, if there was a tree through a line, you wouldn't have that line being tested by the automated equipment and risk throwing a spark into the duff if that line were to be on the ground. So that's something that is already paying dividends for us in terms of our risk reduction. And the ones that are remotely operable from our grid control center in Rockland, we'll deactivate those as conditions materialize, but there are about 450, there are 450 with remote capabilities and many more than that that are kind of analog that have to be operated in the field, and those have been deactivated proactively for the entire wildfire season.
Well, to the chair, I know that you've really helped retail sales because you cannot buy a portable generator within 2 months. So PG&E, they thank you for that. I don't thank you, but I thank them for it.
Yeah, I was at the hardware store the other day, and just in the time I was there, I saw 4 or 5 people in line with them. But I'm going to speak actually specific to that, Councilmember Simmons, right now. So one of the biggest impacts that are coming out of this, and something that the City of Marysville recently dealt with, and I had communicated with Marty and Chief Sachs on this, is the public safety power shutoff. So this is really sort of a last resort effort by us to do everything we can to minimize the risk to the customers we serve. We understand that it's impactful, it's disruptive, but at the end of the day, if we need to de-energize those circuits in the interest of public safety to prevent a fire from occurring, we're going to have to take that action. So I'm going to speak briefly to the conditions that we would need to see materialize in order to do that. The first of those is a red flag condition, which we had recently in Yuba County and the foothill communities of Yuba County. Coupled with that is extreme low fuel moisture, extreme low humidity, sustained winds above 25 miles an hour, observations from the field, and then also the data that we're getting from our weather stations and our fire cameras. And really it takes that sort of perfect storm or that confluence of conditions for us to consider de-energizing certain portions of the system. And it's important to note that while it's not likely that the City of Marysville will be impacted, if we do have to de-energize a transmission circuit due to high winds and wildfire weather, it's possible that portions of the City of Marysville could be affected. So that's part of the reason that I'm here, is to share this information with you and let you know that really the scope of this is now territory-wide, and if there were to be a transmission outage that on one of the transmission circuits that serves the City of Marysville, there could potentially be an impact. So one thing I want to address briefly and I spoke with the chief about this just before the meeting, is during our June 8th event, our press release and some of the collateral that we were putting out to the public listed the City of Marysville as being in scope, and it was not. Really what was driving that is the data sets that we were working with, and as you know, many of the outlying areas of Yuba County in close proximity to Marysville have Marysville addresses. And so that was a mistake on our part. We should not have said City of Marysville. We should have said unincorporated areas of Yuba County, maybe near or adjacent or outside of Marysville. So as I shared with the chief before the meeting, we've corrected that, and we're going to be much more diligent in getting to the granular level of that data so that we don't cause concern where there doesn't need to be any.
Everyone wants to be Marysville,
Right.
but let me tell you something about that. I think, unfortunately, our counties, surrounding counties, have gone through some pretty significant traumatic events, and people get on edge with events like that. Even like just losing power and what am I going to do, and how people start creating plans, and because we've gone through a lot of traumatic events, and so the messaging is important. So I appreciate you guys understanding that and kind of figuring that out, that you can't just save Marysville. But I do appreciate your fortunately for us, as you're communicating with our staff, we get those communications, but kind of the general public doesn't really know all the details and stuff. So also maybe a call out is like, how do we get kind of that formal communication to the rest of the folks, not just the leadership. I know that's kind of the balance, and the communication was being communicated, the psychology of it, understanding that it's traumatic for some folks. So
we'll definitely get into the customer notification piece and also talk a little bit about our medically sensitive customers. So just briefly, this is sort of the area that's most likely to be impacted, not all at once. We hope. That would be pretty extreme, something pretty historic weather-wise if it were to be the entire area. But this just illustrates the areas identified as the highest fire risk. Marysville being, near or on the valley floor is just outside of that Tier 2 area. But as I shared, if we need to de-energize a transmission circuit that traverses the Tier 3 or Tier 2 area that serves Marysville, there is the possibility for impact there. So to Mayor Samoya's question regarding notifications, so we have greatly refined this process since last October of 2018 when we had our first event. We heard loud and clear that we need to be doing more on communication, and we're improving every day on that. But really our goal at this point is to make notifications to our city, county, and emergency response partners 48 hours ahead of that. This is the point in time where we see those weather conditions start to materialize, and where we're beginning to activate our EOC in San Francisco and really starting to look at a potential event, continuing those conversations with our local government and emergency management partners at regular intervals. And at the same time, we'd be communicating out with customers. So one of the important things that I would ask the council to help us out with is, as you're communicating with your constituents, be sure that they've updated their contact information on their pge.com profile, or they can also do that by calling 800-PGE-5000. And make sure that they've signed up for outage alerts and wildfire safety alerts. They can get those via email, text, or phone call, or all three, depending on how much information they want. And that's really one of the big messages from the customer standpoint, is we can't reach you if we don't know how. And so a lot of times folks will move, or they'll change whose name is on the account. So we just want to be sure that folks have that information updated. So again, communicating with our local government and emergency response partners at regular intervals before the event. We convene conference calls to give situational updates. And then of course, once the power has been restored, we'll be notifying everyone as well. I'd like to touch on the restoration process. So you may have heard, or you may have either heard through the media or from previous events, that there could be outages lasting 3 to 5 days. While it's not likely that would be the duration that would affect Marysville, that is very likely potentially for some of the more remote areas of the county that are served by very rural high country circuits that traverse rough terrain. So when we de-energize the system, we have to visually inspect each span of wire to make sure it's intact before we re-energize the system. The last thing we want to do is turn it back on and start a fire. So that requires foot patrols, ATV patrols, helicopters, and the like. The good news is we've changed our approach somewhat on the restoration piece. So instead of waiting until an entire circuit has been patrolled, which could be dozens or even 100 miles, we're restoring that as we patrol it. We're putting in devices that allow us to sectionalize those circuits and do what we call step restoration. So instead of waiting till it's completely done to bring everybody back, we're doing it as we go. So that's going to greatly lessen the outage durations. And then, of course, if we find damage, which we have, there's been many, many accounts of damage that could have potentially started a fire had we not de-energized. And so repairing that damage also takes some time. We will be pulling resources from other areas of the state that aren't affected. So really just beefing up our staffing, positioning people in key areas so that as soon as we get the green light to go patrol, we've got people moving through the field on that. So we're working really hard to reach out to our customers as best we can. There's been a lot of mail going out, helping to educate folks on what they need to do to prepare themselves. Something as simple as teaching someone how to open their garage door when the power's out. Those are the types of things messaging we're really trying to push. Have some water on hand. Have, all the different pieces that you need to have for a basic emergency preparedness plan. Additionally, we have some special focus on our medical baseline, or what are essentially medically sensitive customers. In the event of a public safety power shutoff, we are actively reaching out to them through our call center with personalized calls, not just IVRs or robocalls. And if we're not able to get that individual on the phone, we will roll a truck out there to check on them. And the way we're able to do that, given everything else that's going on, is we're bringing what are called gas service representatives from out of the area. These are individuals that day to day have a lot of public facing exposure with customers and are very comfortable speaking with customers. These are the folks that would come relight your pilot light or those types of things. And they're checking on those customers. If we're not able to make contact with that individual and just basically assure that they have some kind of plan in place to care for themselves during this event, if we can't reach them, we'll leave a door hanger with the phone number they can call to get further information and resources. Also, something that is just new as of this last event, which I believe was June 8th, is we are going to be putting up customer resource centers. We did one up in Oroville with Butte County having been the most heavily impacted, about 20,000 customers during this last event. And it's essentially a large event tent, circus tent, but all white. It's not neon colors. And it's got generation, so access to electricity, air conditioning, cold water, of course, customer resource specialists from PG&E that could help them navigate through. And then also, it's just a place where folks can come to gather, get information, charge their electronic devices, use their medical equipment if they need to. And so we're working actively with Yuba County OES. I just spoke with Scott Bryan earlier today and asked him for a list of places where he would want to see these in the event of a public safety power shutoff. So we're very much engaged with the county on that piece. So I know this was a lot of information and I kind of flew through it. I want you all to know that some of you I'm all meeting for the first time, but I'm always available to the city, whether it be council or staff or your first responders. If you ever have a need from PG&E related to this or anything else, please consider me a resource. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Appreciate it. Any questions?
Good, thank you.
The information that you gave us about people being able to update their information for you, is that in this? I didn't read all the words, but which?
All they would have to do is go to pge.com/wildfire safety, or actually on the top left bullet, it does say my wildfire alerts.
Oh, okay, I see it.
But I would really, I would definitely suggest, if you haven't, just take a few minutes to go to pge.com/wildfire safety. There's a lot of information and resources there about emergency preparedness, what people can do to get their families prepared, their neighbors, their friends. And really, another message we're pushing is, let's all be a good neighbor. If you think your neighbor might have a need or have a sensitivity, just, check in on them, make sure they've got a plan in place. So yeah, pge.com/mywildfirealerts.
Thank you.
I'm sure that'll be in our next newsletter coming out of the city manager's office. that information?
I'd be happy to provide Marty with, we
I
have some
read your
public,
mind.
we have some public-facing collateral also, like fact sheets and infographics and things, so I'll get those over to you, absolutely.
Even for a coffee with the cop?
Sure. Yeah, we have a lot of really easy to understand visuals and things that I can provide, of course, so happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Samoa and Council.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There's a thumb drive. Did you drop a thumb drive? Brown?
Brandon?
Did you drop a thumb drive? I see one on the car.
Oh, man.
Dang, nabbit.
My kid's on it.
Okay, let's move to 6B, this presentation regarding Marysville Animal Service Control. Thank you for this. You want to show who's presenting? Is Kelly or Zach? Okay, hi.
Achilles?
Did you tell him, like, my ability to shoot on a screen? Amazing.
It was pretty amazing. You did a great job.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
It was a good time learning on the simulator on Saturday.
That's pretty cool. Never shot a guy in my life. I think I hit the thing.
Don't take it for face value.
Sorry, Kelly. Hi.
You're good. Hi. Okay, so good evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members. This evening, as the mayor requested, we have an update for animal control services. I will start from the beginning. We first started discussing getting our own animal care services program back in September of 2017. Staff brought forth in December of 2017 a plan of either a part-time or full-time staffing for animal control officer. At that time, council approved a part-time position, which we hired in April of 2018, which is Officer Nicole Sammons, who's here in the back. She started in April, but she didn't start taking any calls until roughly July. With training and trying to get updated with all of the licensing that was getting a little behind. There's roughly, I think, 600 to 800 dogs licensed in the city. So trying to get all of those letters out to everybody who's gone through and gotten rabies certificates, that took a little while, so we started there. Once she started taking calls, we discovered pretty quickly that there was a need for a full-time position, which is when we brought it back to you in September of 18, which council decided at that time to go ahead with a full-time position. So when we started that full-time position, we had already been talking to Field Haven, but when Nicole started, she actually started the partnership with Field Haven, and we've actually come up with some great programs, and we've got some really good opportunities through Field Haven. They've been great with us. To talk about one of those opportunities we had is our TNR program, which is the Trap, Neuter, Release or Trap, Neuter, Return program. This program allows us to go out and capture any of the feral or stray cats that we have in the city. We actually have some vets that donate their time through Field Haven to be able to fix the cats. We've even been able to vaccinate all of those cats, and then we return them back to their area where we got them in the first place. With the TNR program, we've identified 55 colonies so far in the city of Marysville. And we've gotten to the high number of 342 cats that have been TNR'd in the city of Marysville at this time.
Since May 18?
Since July of 18. So 342 cats have been trapped, neutered, vaccinated, and returned to their territory. There's usually a lot of question about the TNR and why they get returned to their territory. It was all new to me. So in this program, I learned that returning the cats to their territory is actually very important. If you don't return the cats, new cats will come and take over that territory. So if we fix them and put them back, they protect their territory, and then hopefully there's no reproducing because we've fixed all the cats in that area. So that's ultimately going to help us reduce our number of cats in the city. The other thing that we've been able to provide is the TNR workshops. So Field Haven sends down a couple of representatives, and we hold classes for the citizens in Marysville to be able to teach them about the program and how they can help, even potentially volunteer, because we actually take the cats down to the Loomis or Lincoln area where Field Haven is, and that's where all the services are provided. So some other services that we've been able to do with Field Haven, we've had 3 low-cost vaccine and microchip clinics. They actually recently had a foster workshop at Friday Night Live, which allows us to be able to educate the citizens that want to assist with things or volunteer for the program. It also teaches them that we actually provide all the necessary things that they need, food or even bottles for the small kittens that they take in. We give them all the supplies that they need. It's just a matter of their time that they're donating to take care of the kittens or the cats that we need to foster. And most of the time the fostering comes with the kittens. They have to be at least 8 weeks old or 2 pounds before we can have them fixed. So that's where the fostering program comes in. We have yet to see any of the fostered kittens actually be released. They're usually adopted because they've become better with people and they're a lot more tame. So that program has helped us with the adopting. So we've adopted out 33 cats and then fostered and adopted out 112 kittens so far. So the vaccine and microchip clinic, they've actually been a great turnout for us. We've had, I'll say 2.5, because the last one was unfortunately rained out and it happened to be a very bad rainy day, so we were all running for cover. But the clinics itself, they provide low-cost vaccines and microchips for cats and dogs, not just cats. And this is also thanks to Field Haven and them being able to donate a vet to come out and take care of all this. So vaccines for the dogs and the cats, the rabies shots, that's all provided at the clinic. The biggest thing for us that we're trying to push out is the microchips, because any of the animals with microchips, we have a scanner. We can scan the pets and get them back to their owners rather than them having to go to the shelter. So the one in June, we actually ran out of microchips. We had to go get some more because there were so many. So we microchipped 71 dogs on our first clinic, which was phenomenal. We weren't expecting that.
These are Marysville residents?
Most of them were Marysville residents. The clinic is open to anybody that wants to come. It's only low cost for the City of Marysville residents. Okay. So there were a few that weren't just City of Marysville residents, but either way, if they're coming to this area for this, they probably come to this area with their dogs. So we have 71 dogs that day that got microchipped. The second one, we actually had quite a few cats that got microchipped also. So 20 cats that day, which is also very helpful because we scan any cats we come in contact with. And then, like I said, the last one was cut a little short. There were still people showing up, standing out in the rain, hoping to get their dog and cat vaccinated and microchipped. We do have another clinic coming up. We're working with the vets right now to get the date. We're hoping for the beginning of August at this point. So next, I created a slide to show you this one for the dogs, the next one for the cats, to kind of give you an idea of how many dogs or cats that we take out to the shelter during a fiscal year, and hoping that the Animal Care Services Officer has an impact on that. Currently, as you're looking at the amounts for the dogs, there's not a whole lot of change. We've focused quite a bit on the cat problem and all the colonies and trying to TNR. So at this point, the dogs are pretty much the same. We're hoping once we have progressed a little bit further with all of our cat programs that we can now then turn our attention to the dogs and see if we can shelter less dogs as well. The cat sheltering, I'm actually very excited about. These numbers have dropped dramatically. And this is all thanks to Field Haven, the TNR program, and Yuba County Animal Care Services allowing us to do the programs we're doing. So in October of 2018, we actually contacted Yuba County and asked them to stop taking cats altogether. So when we first started in July, we asked them to limit the number of cats. We finally got to the point where with Field Haven, we were able to take on all the cats that were being taken to the shelter. So in the third quarter of 18-19, you see a big 0 there, which is fantastic. And then we only had 2 go during between April and June. So the cost, if you don't know, for every animal that goes to the shelter is $85 per animal.
A night.
No, it's just per animal. It doesn't matter how long that they're there or what happens with the animal. It's a cost for us of $85 per animal.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Kelly, what do you do with the animals you pick up that the clinics aren't available at the time you pick them up?
We actually have a pretty good group of volunteers. There's a couple of Facebook pages. Social media has been amazing for us to find the volunteers. So that's where the fostering and the adopting comes in. We have many volunteer foster families that take in the cats when we don't have anywhere else to take them.
Okay, thank you.
So speaking of social media, brings me to my next slide. Social media has been wonderful for us. One of the ways that we're hoping to bring down the number of dogs that are taken to the shelter is by using social media. And for this little guy on the screen here, if you look at the bottom of it, circled in red, it shows how many people we reached. We reached over 6,500 people by posting that we had found this dog on social media. And then on the bottom right also shows 117 shares to be able to get to that 6,500 people.
Did you find his parents?
Yes, he was returned home.
Tagged and vaccinated?
No, not that. It may have been already. That information I don't have. But either way, we were able to locate him and return him to his owner rather than taking him to the shelter and paying an $85 fee at the shelter. So next I have our calls for service. I broke it up a little bit. It might be a little confusing, but I just wanted to be able to show what the average calls per month once we went full-time. So in 2017, there was 46 calls that we averaged per month. And then the beginning of 18, before we went full-time, it was only at 44. And then you can see after September we went full-time, it jumped up to 58. We're currently at about 66 calls a month, roughly. Even though we're on pace to stay at 66, I have a feeling that we probably won't be staying at 66. It'll just continue to increase. The right-hand side just shows you your totals that you have for each calendar year.
So they're calling us directly, not the county?
Correct. If they call the county, they're referred straight to us.
Good.
Next is the shelter costs. The numbers from back here are fairly small, but just by looking at the graphs and not the numbers, you can see how far down we were able to get the shelter costs once we hit the second quarter of 18-19. The first quarter being July through July, August, and September, we weren't up and running on the program yet, so we weren't able to bring the cat number down. Once she was able to get the program going with Field Haven, we were able to drop that pretty dramatically. So that's our average now is a little less than $5,000 a month, or every quarter, which is amazing. It went down quite a bit. So we had quite a bit of savings for fiscal year 18-19 with the TNR program alone. And that's all I got for you. I can answer any questions if you have any.
I just have
Great
one
report.
comment through the chair.
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about the fact you pick up a dog that's not tagged and not vaccinated and you return it back to the parent.
Well, they would have to be licensed, and they'd also have to have their rabies to be licensed. I can't speak to that dog or what happened with it. So if we pick up a dog, the first thing that Officer Sammons does is go up to City Hall or the new software that we have to make sure that it is licensed. If it's not licensed, there's actually some fees that are put onto the owner and a citation given for not having the dog licensed in the first place. There's also fees for being at large that we recently updated in the fee schedule to try to help keep that from happening in the future. So she won't release it without making sure that there's a rabies shot and that it's licensed.
That's what I wanted to hear you say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Ironically, with you speaking this, I just got a picture sent to me. No connection to this, knowing we were doing this, but it's been a problem I've been contacted on a couple times about the animals, about the local people putting food and water out for the animals, specifically downtown. And this picture I just had sent to me was right, I think it's right in front of the brick, it looks like, right there, or that area, but there's actually food and water that's being put out, drawing the cats
Correct.
downtown. So what is something going on with that?
We are. We're working with Field Haven. We actually have been able to identify quite a few people who open feed, which is what we call it, is the open feeding. I believe I just got an email in reference to the brick that we've been in contact with the problem, with the people who are causing the problem and who are open feeding, so we are working on that. We've been able to identify quite a few open feeders and be able to provide education for them and give them another way to help us with the cats rather than just open feeding and causing other issues that come along with that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Buttercovoli, just one more to add on that real quick. We are looking at changing or adding to our ordinance in reference to open feeding because there's nothing that regulates it at this time. So we're working with Field Haven and some of the very, very passionate cat people in the community that we have identified. And so we were working closely with them to come up with a mutual ordinance that would benefit both parties and then bring that before council. So as soon as we get that worked up, that'll be in front of the council for review and see what we can do to help mitigate some of that too on that side of it.
When you say that with the ordinance, I'm assuming that means that there's some kind of action taken if it's, the behavior's not stopped.
That's correct. It'll fall into either an infraction or up to a misdemeanor citation if they don't follow the code. So we're working, instead of just bringing a recommendation forward, we're actually working with those groups to see and identify, because a lot of the ones that we're working with too are frustrated about some of the open feeding, so we're working with them to look at some different parameters that we can come up with and see what works and bring it forward to the council and go forward from there.
Great. That's great. Excuse me.
I was just going to say that my immediate neighbor open feeds, so I'll be more than happy to help expedite that.
You know, I think with this, I'm just thinking through this whole process of taking these cats in and neutering and spading them and turning them loose. They're feral anyway, so I don't know where we're solving anything other than not letting them perpetuate themselves. You're still having that feral cat issue and people are still going to feed those. I'm not sure that I am totally agreed of letting these cats go once you catch them. So I think that needs to be looked at, and personally.
We've looked at it extensively, and what they did it in Wheatland and they did it in another county to the south of us, Field Haven did, and they call it 100 for 100. And so what they did was they trapped 100 cats on 100 days and then neutered and spayed them and put them out within the community. And like Kelly was saying, if you don't put them back in their same colonial area, new cats will come in that aren't fixed and take over and continue to reproduce, and you're going to have a lot more cats. So when we identify these colonies and we trap and we neuter and release them, they're going back and they're not reproducing and they're protecting their area. So over the course of time, with
Slow down population growth.
the population decreases on those. And so they've done it in Wheatland. It was a big success story where they've done that and gotten those numbers dramatically down. And there was one more, I'm not sure if it was Woodland or Yolo, that Field Haven had worked with as well. And so the next closest population that is severely impacted would be Marysville and Yuba County, and that's why they moved up to help us out with our program. So
you're saying if you neuter and spade them and turn them loose over a period of time, they're not going to be able to reproduce, that's going to decrease the population. But it doesn't fill up the problem of having feral cats going in my yard or anybody else's yard, running wild, and people feeding them. It's just perpetuating that. Eventually they'll die, yeah, but that's not the point.
well, if we trap all of them and they all go to, they can't all go to the shelter. If they do, then we're paying the $85 for the euthanization, and we're back at $54,000 to $44,000 a year. But we did work with Field Haven to, they started a barn program, and there is some individuals that are signing up for that in the Yuba County foothills. And in their barn program, if we're seeing like a big colony like we have down at Frank and Booth and behind some of the buildings, WV, Alton, in that area. If we identify a big colony there, we reduce the size of the colony by trapping them, and then they put them into that barn program up in the hills so they can chase rats and snakes and do whatever, but you still don't want to eliminate that whole colony.
Okay.
So if you got a colony of 25, then we're going to probably reduce it to 10 or 12, that type of thing. But we can't get rid of the total numbers, or else it would just perpetuate the problem and make it bigger than what we have.
Well, we have to tag dogs. Maybe we have to look at tagging cats, because other cities have done that, but that's just something that'll probably cause a revolution, but you know, it is what it is. Thanks, Chief.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So I'm looking at that, we are fiscally for 18-19, it costs, what am I seeing, the city $23,000 is where we're at, which is a significant decrease from what we've had before, but it's still coming out of our budget, is what I'm hearing.
We had, for fiscal 18-19, we had actually budgeted $41,000 for shelter fees, because that's where we've been in the past. So we were able to save that much money, getting it all the way down to just over $23,000 this time.
Are those fees being offset by, like, you know, the 800 registered animals in the city, or?
It
is that just coming out of the budget?
cover it a little bit. Another thing that we changed in the fee schedule was upping the licensing costs a little bit, but also implementing the fees for the dogs at large. And we also came up with a program for fix-it tickets for the licensing of dogs, and for at-large dogs, that the fees actually come directly to the city. We can waive going to court with those citations as long as they fix the problem and come and pay the fee for having to had fixed the problem in the first place.
So we're trying to figure out, as a business, to
Correct.
break even on this whole $23,000.
And that's
for
why being able to get it down to 23,000 makes it a little bit easier to reach as far as the fines and the fees that are causing these problems in the first place. But also the education piece is huge, to be able to get that number down also, or the microchipping, to get everybody to have their animals microchipped so we can just return them and not have to worry about the shelter at all. And that was the big goal with the cats, was to stop taking them to the shelter and find other means to be able to take care of them or handle them instead of going straight out to the shelter. I mean, just looking at the fourth quarter, I put the cat sheltering back up there. For the fourth quarter in 16-17 especially, you see the high number there. That's their breeding season. That's usually when most cats breed and you have a lot of litters, and that's usually our busiest time when it comes to cats, because there's litters turned in consistently. So without Field Haven and the program that we were running with them, we would still see those kinds of numbers, not having the TNR and the fostering and all the volunteers that help us out with the program.
Well, I'm happy to see that it's reduced by almost half. I was just kind of like, you know, it's still a good number.
It is still a big number, and that's why the hope is, now that we're getting the cat thing figured out and being able to bring that number down, we always hope to be able to focus on the dogs a little bit more, and potentially reaching out and trying to find another Field Haven, but for dogs, to hopefully work on that too.
So clarification, the number I'm seeing here is only for cats per se? Or is
No,
it
it's
both?
for cats, dogs, and there's actually bats and stuff that are
Okay,
taken out there
okay, thank
because
you.
they have to do the rabies testing.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, the 23,000 that we're looking at, we're anticipating it being lower for 1920, because that first quarter chart that she showed should have been a bill of about 10,000. The program wasn't ramped all the way up at that point in time, so when we started getting ramped up in the second quarter, you see that bill go from that $10,000 down to about 5,000, 4,000 range. So on average, maybe we're looking at 17 to 18,000 on par for 1920 in our projections versus that 23. So we've already cut that down.
Yeah, good job on that, thank you.
Excuse me. The 66 calls per month, you said that you anticipate that to increase. Do you think that's because people are now hearing about it more and the county's also referring them to us?
Right. I mean, even with the recent calls going up a little bit, that did have something to do with the cats, but that's been the biggest thing, is word of mouth and figuring out that we actually have an animal control officer that they can reach out to for help. So I don't know that it'll go super high, but I think it will continue to raise a little.
That's good. You guys are doing a great job with this. It's exciting to see the difference that it's made already. I have one question, just referring to Mr. Simmons about What do you do when you have, cats coming in your backyard? Are there resources with Field Haven or any other?
So the training that Field Haven does in reference to the TNR, it's a great way for all of the citizens to be able to learn about the TNR program. It's a great way for Field Haven to be able to provide them with resources or with ideas or things that they can do to try to help mitigate some of the problems that they're having. And like Chief Sachs said, there have been areas that the colonies are so large, we do remove some of the cats, but ultimately you don't want to remove them all because then it causes a whole nother issue. There will always be people releasing litters of kittens that they don't want anymore, so there's always going to be cats that we need to trap and release, but if we eventually trap and release them all and they're all fixed, then they can't reproduce anymore. So that's the end goal, to bring those numbers down.
Thank you.
To the chair. If a citizen calls one of us council member and say, I have a cat problem, where can I get a trap? Do we have a trap that they can come down?
We do have quite a few traps, so they can come in and request to speak to Officer Salmons, and she'll be able to walk them through the whole process, but we do have cat traps for rent.
So they trap the cat, and then call animal control to come and pick it up?
Correct, and there's a little bit of a program that we do for certain days for that to happen, but if they just reach out to Officer Salmons, she'll be able to walk.
You guys got it covered pretty darn good.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Couple things. 4th of July is coming, and we know that pets get antsy with the noise.
Nicole and I just spoke about that today. We have a flyer that we put out every year, so that'll go out again this year.
And what does that say?
It just gives a lot of the pet owners quite a few ideas of what to do for 4th of July, to be able to provide them with what to do with their pets before the fireworks and potentially what to do after if there's a problem.
But are we gonna have people on call to kind of help out with some of the animals that are gonna be escaping?
Usually the call volume actually happens the day after. That's where we have a lot of the issues. People get home late on 4th of July. They don't even realize that their animals are missing until late that night. So typically, and most of the dogs wouldn't even be found until daylight because they're hiding somewhere. So I anticipate Friday morning there being quite a few calls in reference to dogs or pets missing. And she will be here on Friday first thing.
Thank you. I want to remind folks, this started because there was public outrage, as you remember, and there was a couple bites. The county wasn't being responsive, at least for our residents' needs. So a lot of the calls weren't being answered by the county because that was part of their contract. So I think for us, it's easy for us to look at the costs, the dollar costs, but the benefits for our community, we actually answer the call for them because that's what they wanted. They wanted an actual program, have an actual person to go out there and respond to not just dogs and cats, but it could be a duck, it could be any animal out there that need a rescue or help or needed to be removed. So we responded to the public, so I think we should be proud of that. The calls actually are saying that people are saying, okay, we know there's someone who's gonna make it. People weren't calling before because they were just frustrated that no one was gonna show up, why should I even call? So I'm proud of the program, proud of the partnership you guys have made with the nonprofit. Is there a cost? Are we paying them for their services? Or are they getting, how do they pay for their?
We do have it built into the budget. There is some cost that we help reimburse them. Although the staffing itself is all on a volunteer basis. The money we provide helps with some of the education and the materials and the clinics that we have. It helps pay for the actual medication at a discounted rate that we help purchase that. Field Haven actually also recently got a grant, and they chose to only use those grant monies within the City of Marysville because of the partnership that we've created. So they're actually applying for, I believe, a couple more grants to be able to put more money towards the City of Marysville.
Thank you.
And since you brought up the dog bite, I just want to mention Officer Salmons has done, I believe, 3 vicious dog that we've taken to court. We've taken owners to court in reference to their dogs, us deeming them as potentially dangerous or vicious, and we've actually taken those 3 dogs away from the owners who have bit multiple times, 2 to 3 times, and the dogs were actually euthanized because of it.
Thank you.
I have a question. So when you say we're getting 60 a month average, does that go, where does that, those calls are going? Are they going through our dispatch? Really, 60 calls? Okay.
Thanks, Kelly.
66 calls is a very small amount of number going through dispatch, comparatively speaking.
No, I agree, but it's still 66 more calls. That's surprising that it goes
get
through
more.
there. Yeah.
Now they'll get the word out.
One more thing on the funding topic, just to interject real quick, there's a lot of animal lovers in our community that like to donate. And so when they donate to Field Haven has established its own Marysville account, so all the local dollars that are donated to them from Marysville stay with Marysville and go to the program and help offset those costs as well. So that's how we're able to get some of those costs down, by continuously partnering with them on that. So just wanted to add that in there.
Well, on the 342 cats that we've TNR'd so far, we actually only provided funding for 200 of those cats. So Field Haven has gone out and gotten their own funding for the other 142 cats.
That's awesome. I'm just proud of you guys. I think the goals that were kind of set when we kind of started this program, reducing the population to getting those calls answered, is being done, and I think that the public is really, I think that they really do appreciate all the efforts that are being made, and the partnerships you've made are incredible. So continue the good work, and I know the rats and mice in our town are not happy, so that's also always a good thing as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you to the animal control officer doing all the work.
Absolutely.
I think we ought to give her a hand.
Hey. Okay, let's move into item 7, community consent calendar forum. We ask individuals wishing to address city council concerning consent calendar items or any matters not already on the agenda. We invite you to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. When you're called, we ask you to please go to the podium, give your name clearly for audio recording. You are requested to address your comments to us, the council, and not to the audience, and we do let you know that by state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any items not appearing on the posted agenda. If you would like a response from the council, we ask you to please fill out a speaker's card, and you will be contacted within the next few days. Member of the public like to make a comment?
Good evening, Council. I have a gentleman this evening with me. His name's William Kendall, and he would like to say something to you. He's a really exceptionally perceptive and a good young man, and I'd like to give him my 3 minutes.
I'd like to begin by saying I'm very stressed about this, so don't mind if I stutter on that. We have a growing issue in our community. I mean, who here has driven outside of the levees that contain this river and seen 1 or 2 homeless people? We have walked through this city filled with these people without houses. I mean, like that lady talking about pets just a moment ago. She was trying to give these pets help. So why can't we do this for people? We have those other agencies such as Habitat for Humanity or... Okay, I blanked out, but we have these other people trying to give houses to these homeless. So can the city provide the time to bring these people homes? Like, there are these people without houses out there who are in the elements, who have no house, no food, no water. You may say, why not get it from the river? Filled with mercury, so who can drink it without poison? And not to mention, when winter comes and all that rain falls, the mud and floods wash us away. And if we have another camp or car fire, homeless people are right there in those fields where they won't be, and right there in the forestry, fire will burn right through us. And if we're in the, and I noticed the electrical help, they're trying to fix the electric lines, and they're trying to fix these houses for animals. So why not fix these houses for people? And I want you to ask me or tell me what you think straight about this.
Well, young man, what's your name again?
William.
William, thank you for being here. I know it takes a lot of strength, and I'm very proud of you for doing this. We can have a long conversation, but this is not the place to have that conversation. So feel free to contact me. I would be willing to sit down with you and your parents and your family, and we can discuss some of these issues. Homelessness is a serious thing, and it's a pretty complicated thing. And I think there's a lot of good people and a lot of good organizations in our area that are doing some really good things. But again, it's really complicated. I wish I could give you a simple answer, but thank you for being so brave and stepping up.
Okay, if you guys still feel apathetic about this, I want you guys to walk out into those places and spend a week out there homeless on the same budget as any homeless person. And think of this. Us children are the future generation. Is this how you want your children to grow up? With these people walking around filthy because they can't shower or eat or drink?
Thank you, young man. You made your point. Appreciate it.
Thanks, William. I would like to say there is a bathroom issue where he's at right now. The bathroom was taken away 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it still hasn't been replaced out there, and it came from the city. So can you guys at least give him back the bathroom at the REAP site? If you haven't been there, it's over the levee behind the juvenile department. You'll see.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public like to make a comment? Oh, sorry. Seeing no other members of the public making comments, let's move to item 8. Item 8 is consent calendar. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and are therefore approved by one motion unless a council member or the city manager would like to request that a matter be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion. What's the will of the council? There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All's in favor?
Comment real quick?
Yes, sir.
I noticed the approval of accounts payable is $171,000. It's usually almost $250,000. Where are you putting that money? Rhetorical question.
Thank you. Motion and second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved, a vote of 5-0. Let's move to item 9, section 9. These are discussion and action calendars. Item A will be the approval of community sponsorship contributions. The recommendation is to authorize the city manager to provide $2,500 community sponsorship contribution to the U.S. Sutter Arts Council and the Mary Airing Museum as provided for in the newly established community organization sponsorship object code of the budget. This comes from our city manager, Ms. Brown.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you may recall, earlier this year, we had a fairly robust workshop and dialogue around special events and special event fee waivers in particular. After staff did some research and heard what the council gave in terms of direction at the, I believe it was the April workshop on special events, we came back with a fund, really proposing a fund to the council called Community Sponsorship Fund, and in it had 3 major components. One was what we've been calling legacy events to provide fee waivers for those legacy special events. I believe there was 9, and then if you add the 2 that are sponsored by the city, the Peach Festival and the Christmas Parade, that makes 11 events. The second component was to establish a fund for special events that would be evaluated on a first-come, first-served basis. That fund had up to $10,000 in it for this fiscal year. And then the third and final component was something that we observed in other cities of providing community organizational sponsorship. And so we thought we would propose that to the council, trying that this year, and some seed money of approximately, well, exactly, not approximately, $5,000. And so far, early on this year, we already received a request from the Yuba Sutter Arts Council in the amount of $5,000, and then also the Mary Aaron Museum in the amount of $2,500. And so staff is recommending to give $2,500 to each organization for this year, which then, of course, would make that organizational fund have a 0 balance for the remainder of the fiscal year. That concludes my presentation, unless you have any questions for me.
Is there questions from the council?
Just a comment. You know, we need to review this, have staff review this. There was no time limit established, and I think we didn't have foresight enough to realize that first come, first serve, and $5,000 is gone. And that means for the rest of the year, no one can apply for anything in that particular account. And I talked to the city manager, and she says they're going to review that with leadership and come back with a recommendation to the council as to just exactly how we can improve that, because the first 2 companies, the agencies come in, they exhaust it, and no one else during the whole year can draw any money against that account. So good job thinking about that, and bring it back and see if we can improve on that for the next budget cycle. Thank you.
I have the same issue that, and I think we discussed this at the time when we were putting this in the budget, that it would be, you know, the aggressor was going to get all the money right up front, and which is obviously what would happen. We depleted in our first request. But the bigger question that I even have is, that fund was this events money. Are these actually events? Or
No, actually, the community sponsorship fund that we brought forward and proposed to the council during the budget process was to have those 3 components. So there's the first come, first serve, $10,000 for special events only, and then there's the legacy ones, and then the third one was sponsorship of organizations, not events. And we talked about coming up with, actually, as you mentioned, Councilmember Buttacavoli, we did talk about setting up some sort of system for the $10,000 special events, but my recollection is I don't think we got that far with the discussion about the organizational piece. And as Councilmember Simmons already stated, we did talk about the idea of maybe this year, the recommendation being that we move forward with an understanding that staff would come back with a more formal process for this particular line item for organizations. One idea is to, you know, put out a call and have people write a proposal, what they plan, you know, what nonprofits plan to use the money for. Maybe an ad hoc of the council would want to form a committee and come back with a recommendation to the full council. It's just one way to do it. I was going to recommend that maybe we try something different next year when we have more time to develop that policy, and move forward with this recommendation for this year. But if the council wants to table it, certainly we can do something else.
Well, the other concern I have on this request, especially from the Arts Council, is we have been working with them for 2 years, as they've been working with Yuba College to get their signage done in front of their place, and it is still not completed. I'm not sure, Brad, if you were on that with the planning, but that sign has been all done, approved, to be put into place, and because we didn't allow pole signs, so there was some decorative metal to be put on it, and it's still not done. So I have a little bit of a hard time turning around to sponsor their program when they haven't even followed through on their permit, their use permit for the sign. Now, I know it was partly the college, but it was directly involved with the Arts Council.
The council could also consider putting a stipulation on that funding to the Yuba Sutter Arts Council and giving them till the end of the fiscal year, this year, before we issue the check to finish that project. I think as you pointed out to me, Councilmember Buttacavoli, the plan was to use students in the classes during the school year in the welding class. Well, school won't start until September, so giving them 1 or 2 semesters to finish the project, and then, they get the sponsorship from the city, and if they don't, then they don't, or something like that.
I agree with you, and I don't have a problem with doing that, but I will say they've gone through 2 school seasons
Understood.
without their metal department coming up with the final completion of that sign.
Maybe shorten the timeframe, this 1 semester till December to do it, or something like that.
If there are any more questions, we don't have to solve it right now. Any other questions?
Comment, and just about the fact that the money will run out at a certain point, and probably fairly quickly, since it's a low amount that we have to offer, but it's not uncommon. I know I'm doing fundraising events on my own, going to different organizations. They have a certain amount of money that they have for their fiscal year to give to community things, and I've heard several times when I've been knocking on the door of donation world, oh, I'm sorry, we've run out. We've given away our budget for the year. So that's not uncommon for people to hear. But if we had a process where we maybe gave incrementally, we decide, okay, we can give this much at a time or something like that, maybe more people would be able to take advantage of that. But that's just an idea about that. And I'm on the Arts Council, but I know you could communicate that with Mr. Reed as well. But I can also talk to them and say, we have this, I can find out about that, find out what's happening and have that discussion as well.
Thank you.
Well, just to finish on that portion, to find out, the use permit was given on that based on they would do it specifically to the design presented to us. And we let them go ahead and put the pole sign part of it up without completing it, and here we are almost 2 years later, so. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Real quick, so we're talking, this $5,000 account is expunged for 18-19 or 19-20 budget?
1920.
19-20 budget. 19-20, so it's done.
Well, if we make the decision.
Yeah, that's up to the council.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
With the parameters that we laid out in the city council and those 2 agencies that applied for that, they complied exactly with what we asked them to do. I don't know that we should penalize them for complying because we didn't put any restrictions on it. I agree with Bruce. The Arts Council does a lot of good things. They paint these signs around these transformed places. They did the little process on B Street. They do a lot of things, but this money here was designed for specific, and they complied with what we asked them to do. And so I don't think we should penalize them, but yet put a parameter on when to get this sign thing, if that's the will of the city council, to get it done in a certain amount of time.
Well, I'd like to respond to that too. I totally agree with you, Bill, that they did follow. I think where we need to look at is for the next year. Decide what we're doing here and then look for the next year. But I do see an issue with the fact that the Arts Council has not adhered to what they already said they would do on another issues. But I will agree with Councilman Simmons there that they did comply with approaching the city for that money.
Any other questions or clarifications? I'll invite the public to comment on this matter. Okay, seeing none, I think we're close. I think what we're asking staff is to have a process ready for us for next year. And then I think everyone's fine with the stipulation to the U.S. Sutter Arts Council that for them to be able to complete in the next fiscal year the sign before these funds, the $2,500 are released. Are we okay with that?
Say that again, please.
One, we're asking staff to put together a process so it's not first come, first serve. First come, first serve. Two, that if a motion is made with the stipulation that the $2,500 to the U.S. Sutter Arts will be released only after their sign is completed,
And they have till the end of the fiscal year.
and they have the end of the fiscal year.
Fiscal year July
June
1,
30,
2020? Or
yeah.
June, okay. June
Of
30th, 2020.
2020.
Is that okay? Is there a motion? Sir, you like to make a motion?
No, a motion amended by what you just
Motion
presented
by
there.
Mr. Buttercawali, is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved with the vote of 5-0. Let's move to item B, authorize applying for a grant to develop Ellis Lake Master Plan. The recommendation is to authorize the city manager to apply for, and if awarded, accept a grant from the Yuba Water Agency to develop an Ellis Lake Master Plan. This recommendation comes from our city manager, Ms. Brown.
Good evening again. As many of you on the council are aware, I have been talking to the Yuba Water Agency for some time about an interest in developing some sort of Ellis Lake Master Plan. We're affectionately calling it here Revitalization Strategy and Action Plan in the staff report, with the idea of comprehensively looking at the entire lake, from improving water quality, sustainability, and future strategies and action plan concepts that would integrate water sustainability, connectivity, looking at how the lake connects to the surrounding community, as well as East Marysville, and also modernization. There's quite a few things related to the Ellis Lake Park that could stand some modernization at this point. So that would be another aspect of the plan. So really taking a comprehensive look at both the water, the park area around it, infrastructure that's there, and hopefully, eventually I think the goal is to develop an implementation plan for moving forward and funding whatever the outcome of the action plan would be. This is really would be a partnership with the water agency. There's no local match that I would be offering. I'd be applying to the agency with the idea of the agency would hopefully fully fund the project as well as provide technical support and assistance. I think, as the council knows, we're a little short-staffed in the community development department right now, and it would be pretty heavy lift for that department and myself to be project managers on it. So I would be seeking also technical support from the water agency, but with an understanding that there would be some more, partnership between the policymakers, both at the water agency and the council, as well as a leading role, partnership role with city staff, those who are here, and the water agency staff as well, working on this together. So, I think it's a really exciting project. I hope the council does too. I think it provides an awful lot of options and ways to look at the entire lake from all the concerns, from water quality to infrastructure to how we actually use the green ring, the green necklace around the lake. All of those aspects come into play by looking at it in a comprehensive way like this. So I'd like to move forward with applying for a grant to the agency, and then of course this is also a request that if approved by the agency, the authorization by the council to accept the grant and the technical support. That concludes my presentation to the council, unless you have questions for me.
I have a question, if I might.
Sure.
This Ellis Lake Master Plan, that's a plan for renovation. Is that going to go on a shelf and sit there because we don't have the funds to exercise it? What are we going to do with it? We have plans all over and they're sitting on the shelf. I'd hate to see this plan be done and then it sit on the shelf because we don't have funds to do what the plan says we should do. So is there any ideas or any type of consideration as to what happens after this plan's made?
Well, there's pretty strong commitment on the part of the water agency to move from plan to action, and they have been very committed and very interested, and they're equally excited, I think it would be safe to say, about the whole project. As Jackie's cheering out in the audience.
Well, Jackie's excited about everything, so.
I'm a hometown girl, I can take care of the Ellis Lake.
She gave up garbage for water. I guess that's a pretty good thing.
They're committed.
Yeah, I think there's a strong commitment
Good.
there.
That's a good idea. Okay, fine. I'm happy with that.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions?
No.
Not that it kind of matters. Something bugs me here, that you're asking for the application, but then also you're asking us to authorize you to accept it. Why do you need the acceptance now and not wait till afterwards and get an acceptance?
Oh, I was just trying to, do two birds with one stone. I don't like saying that word, but, trying to expedite the process. One of the things that we aren't sure about, and you notice there's no dollar amount here because part of the process we've already talked about at a staff level would be having to vet and actually evaluate, well, what does that truly cost? I mean, you could see it's quite a laundry list. It's going to be a dollar amount, a fairly big dollar amount. So we need to go through at the staff level a process of figuring that out before going out with an RFP and an RFQ process. So since the agency so far isn't asking for any matching funds, I guess I thought that it would be easier to ask for both application authority as well as, if awarded, the authority to accept the funds, since it's not any matching funds from our side. And actually, this is something we've been starting to do with other grants, but usually you get to see a dollar amount. We haven't been able to get together to figure that out yet, and they're gonna help me do that.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
So, we made a decision a while ago as a council of, I believe it was $143,000 for a project to start on the lake. Does this action affect that in any particular way?
Well, the aeration project, I think, is the one that you're referring to,
Yes.
and if you might recall, that project is something that came as a result of really a fine from the state. And so we had two choices, really, either pay the state or try something. Either way, we were gonna spend the money. And so what we had proposed to the council was, well, if we have to spend it either way, we might as well try something to improve the lake. So we're still moving forward with that, but of course, we only have that pot of money, so it's really like a pilot project.
Yeah.
And that's still moving forward. I mean, that's actually supposed to happen in August, which I think will help inform this project for sure, and what kinds of things, the water quality piece that I mentioned as part of the scope of work, the results of that aeration will help inform what this should look like at a deeper level. Is it working? Did the pilot work? If it worked, then maybe this plan takes it to the next step and funds it. If it didn't work, the pilot, then that informs it, and maybe, working with the water agency, we take the water quality issue in a completely different direction. So I think that 140,000 is just gonna be like more technical information that will inform the final scope of work in this project.
No, I get it. I was just kind of hoping that, since if we do go into partnership, that we might be able to save that 140, but I didn't think so.
We
I just
have to
wanted
spend
ask.
it either way. We
I
either have to
figured
pay the
that.
state or, yeah.
It's worth a question.
Maybe that's why I'm having some hard, because let's say the pilot comes back and says, this really works. Now we need $450,000 to do it throughout the lake. And I imagine that we'll put an application, and maybe you come back to us for another application to the water agency, or is this gonna be, I believe that the pilot's gonna work. It's gonna give us great information, great data on, to improve the health of our lake. And based on the initial presentation, they said that if we were to make the entire pilot for the lake, it would be about $500,000 for the entire project to be completed throughout the lake. That seems to me that's something also within the mission of the Yuba Water Agency for them to be able to support that ask as well. Is that ask, or is either one going to take away from the other?
No, because what's gonna happen is by the time we get this going, the results of the aeration study will have come back, and that information will be used to build this scope of work. And it'll either be what you just said, an expansion will be included in the plan, and we'll go, yep, that worked, okay, now let's make it part of this bigger plan that includes all these other items I mentioned, or the result might be something different, right? And then they know that we're back at square one in evaluating water quality. But either way, that information, technical information, and the results are gonna be used to build on this plan. We're not gonna lose that information. We're definitely gonna use it to either expand it further, like you're saying. And, I think that's something that we've already at the staff level talked considerably about, like finishing this up to see what's the outcome so we can make a good use of public funds, right? And not, reinvent the wheel or something.
One more on the pilot project. Is that the reason why the water fountains aren't being turned on this fiscal year? I haven't seen them turned on.
That I am not quite sure about. I don't know the answer to you. I'll have to get back to you. I'll have to talk to
So
the
they turn them off
superintendent.
because of the pilots the testing the water, the aeration?
My understanding is the testing's starting in August.
Okay,
So,
then we haven't seen the water.
Let me talk to the
Fountain's been turned
superintendent
on.
about it and get back to you, and I'll get it to the council in a council update.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think I understood what you were asking there, but I think with this, what we're shooting for here is a lot bigger scope than just going from our pilot to a larger aeration project.
Correct.
Agreed. So,
The pilot.
we'll be using that data from that, but I think aren't we looking at a much larger project than just finishing out the aeration project?
Aeration's just gonna take care of like a portion of it.
The pilot.
The pilot,
Yeah.
just to get a
The-
survey of the whole thing.
But according to the presentation we received a few months ago, the entire aeration system that were put throughout the lake would be about $500,000.
Yeah, but again, I think we're looking at a master plan that's gonna encompass way more than just
Correct.
water
So
quality,
I guess
is
my
what I
question
wanna
is,
make
it's not
sure
gonna
that-
take away from the big asking for 500,000 if we're gonna ask for $5 million or something.
Well, so,
I think you've got a little more confidence than I do in that project working anyway.
through the chair. So, I mean, as I understand it, is that we're looking to go into sponsorship, I mean, with Yuba Water on this whole thing, but even if that aeration pilot program comes up with information that may not necessarily be good for us, the agency might be able to find a different program
Right.
that would work out better. So, I say,
Yeah, move forward.
The one other thing I just would mention, you know, the water agency is interested in the comprehensive whole plan.
Right.
They don't want to do just sort of one-off projects or aspects or pieces of it. They want to do the whole thing, and they want to implement it very much. They're very interested in that. Yeah, do you want to say a few words, Jackie?
I'd like to say something before she comes up. You know, this aeration program I just don't think that's gonna work, and I'll tell you why. That lake needs to be flushed, and if you're not flushing that out with water that's not mineral laden, you're gonna have this same problem every year when it gets hot. And people forgetting about the opportunity we have with Yuba County Water Agency to provide us 2,500 acre feet of Yuba River water, which is snowmelt water, which is very, very mineral minus PhD. Unless you start flushing that water out, you're not gonna have nothing but a stagnant lake. And so don't forget, and I'm gonna come back to you guys later on about doing a test project on that Yuba River water pump. Because if we can prove to you without a reasonable doubt that flushing that water out during April through November clarifies the algae problem, and then this other program, it's there, it's authorized, the pump's there, all we need to do is test it. And if you think that by putting that aeration in that lake without flushing, it's going to clarify that water from algae bloom, I think you're sadly mistaken. I agree with my colleague. I think you're setting your standards too high for that particular aeration program. I've said my piece, so I'll be back to see you.
Well, I'm not speaking for the board, because of course this has to go to the board, but what I can tell you is, and speaking with Marty, is they want, this is number one project for us, and they want to hire, you know, the engineers to come in. There's only 3 in the state, or only 3 in the United States that are qualified for this type of project. So that's something that'll be under the grant funding, so we'll do that first. And then, of course, the recommendations will come back and let you know exactly what has to happen. So you're talking probably millions versus, you know, 500,000. So, and, but again, it goes to the board, but that's their projection, and that's what I'm here to help facilitate with Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Well, I think the public's excited too. Thank you so much. Yeah. Any other questions from the board, from the council? I'd like to open up to the public. Any members of the public?
What you said, Bill Simmons, is good.
Thank
Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize the city manager to apply for, and if awarded, accept the grant from the Yuba Water Agency to develop an Ellis Lake master plan.
I'd like to make a motion.
Motion
Second?
by Hudson, second by Buttercaboli. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved, a vote of 5-0. Thank you. The pressure's on. Item 9C, resolution amending, adjusting the City of Marysville annual statement of investment policy. The resolution 2019-34 would, adopting that resolution, would adopt the annual statement of investment policy. This comes from our finance director, Sisinski. Close?
I just asked her to stand up so we could all see her. Thanks. It's a kind of an awkward spot you're in.
I was kind of excited about staying in my corner, but. Okay, so good evening, Mayor and council members. So I am bringing to you today is a recommendation to adopt a new improved investment policy. So in accordance with Government Code Section 53646-2A, the treasurer or chief financial officer may present a statement of investment policy each year for adoption. I do want to let you know the last time that this came to council was in August of 2016. That was the last time that we had a current, updated policy for an investment policy. So it should also be noted that this policy is still has the same, is not deviated from the old policy that we have, and will still continue the same policies that we set forth in the current policy. So really what we're doing is we're clarifying the guidelines for the management and investment of our city public funds. And so we help in the following areas. So our maximum security, which is our safety, our daily cash flow commands, which is obviously we need liquidity in anything that we do, and maximum investment return and yield, which is something that within the California Code we are to strive for a yield in what we do. So these have, sorry, I lost my notes. I'll have to hold them up this way instead. So these three manners that we do that have always been in the government code. Is just our old policy made a lot of promises and statements that we were not able to keep throughout the time. When it came to that, it was written in a way that was very confusing. The policy within the state of California has changed over the last few years. So if you were to read the current policy that we have and then the current policy we're proposing tonight, a lot of the codes, the government code sections, the investment amounts, what you can invest and what you can't, your percentages have all changed. So we had those individually listed throughout the policy. Now this current policy will state that we will now conform to whatever the California State Government Code says. And so every year we will just continue to review those, but we're not, as California changes on their percentages, we also change along with them instead of having to revise it every year and come back with this change from 5 to 6% or this change from 8%, to 2%. We now comply on a consistent basis. The other part of bringing this to the council is now we are looking at joining the Yuba County pool, Yuba County investment pool, which will be the next item I will be presenting. This also allows a clear connection, a clear statement of joining their pool. Our prior policy was very unclear on the guidelines, whether we matched the pool or we did not. So this brings this clarity together. The other part that this is also helping us with is it's given us a delegation of duties between the city council, what the city manager is responsible for, what the finance director is for. There was not that listed in the prior policy. And then the other main part that I want to say is it also is going to help us for quarterly reporting. So currently we do not bring to you any kind of statement that says here's our current balances, here's our current bank statements, here's our current investments that we have. I looked back and I believe about 3 years ago that you were receiving such reports from the city finance director on where you stood with your finances. And that has not happened, I believe, in at least 2.5, 3 years, even though the current policy said that it would be done on a monthly basis. So this policy is now saying that on a quarterly basis, we will be presenting to the council exactly where we stand with all of our financials, our bank statements, beyond just an AP list. You guys will actually see what's in our LAIF account, what is in our general checking account, what's in our bond account, so that you guys are aware of exactly where our cash flow stands, not just what we present to you on a yearly basis when we present the current budget. So it just gives you guys better transparency and the community to see where the money is at and why we have it where it's at, and then you can ask questions. So again, creating better transparency for the community and for the council, because right now I feel like you guys have been, it hasn't been hidden, but it hasn't been something that has been brought to your attention. It needs to be on a regular basis as you guys are monitoring the finances for the city. So that concludes my presentation of why we would need to update our investment policy. And this would be something that we would bring back on a yearly basis. If there's any updates, obviously we're watching the California Code and reading it, and it went through legal. So if there is changes, we will be bringing that to you to say, here's the changes that we request be made.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing no questions or comments from the public on this matter? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-34.
So moved.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion is approved, the vote of 5-0. Thank you. Item 9D. It is 9D, resolution joining the County of Yuba Investment Pool. Recommendations to approve Resolution 2019-35, authorizing investment in the Yuba County Treasurer's Pool. Again, this comes from our Finance Director, Mrs. Sinsky. If I say faster,
Mr.
maybe.
Chinsky, maybe that's all good. So I'm finding out I'm a little more comfortable when I actually have a PowerPoint presentation. It makes it a little bit easier to present, so
Yes.
I apologize for the stumbling. It's learning this part. So with you just joining the investment policy, it does state in our current investment policy that we are now, one of the current investments that we can be involved in is the Yuba County Treasurer's Investment Pool is listed as an authorized investment, and it conforms to the permitted types of investments that are stated in Section 53600 of the California Government Code. So we have done extensive research between the policy that the current agency has and ours, and they do conform and they do match. That was another reason of bringing a current investment policy, so we could bring this proposal to the council. Our past policy that we had actually had a few conflicting items that did not confer with the Yuba County pool, and now we are in accordance with them. So they also have the same objectives of the city, which is again is the safety, liquidity, and availability and yield of funds. I do want to let you know that I have been working with the county, and there are no fees for us to join. We currently have not committed any sort of dollar amount to them, but just for the opportunity to join their pool. So by joining this pool, it'll do several things for the city. First, it's going to help to foster a positive, trusting, and supportive jurisdictional working relationships within the regions. So Yuba County obviously has to be a portion of the pool. It's basically their checking account. So school districts are also involved. The water agency has opted in. There's several different departments and jurisdictions within the county who are a part of this investment pool. And so it also it helps us to foster those relationships because there's other agencies that we will be working with. So this will also offer the city another financial source and option to fund future city projects and/or address urgent, time-sensitive infrastructure improvements with minimal bureaucratic and administrative red tape. So again, by these relationships that we will build and have the money in there, again, we have the liquidity, plus we have more opportunities to approach other agencies that are around us because they are also going to be part of this investment pool. And then again, it'll also, additional benefits would also be to provide a short-term bridge or a loan financing to address temporary and urgent city urgent city circumstances. So if we do have an emergency within the city and we need a quick source of funds for some reason unknown, we would also have that as another way to be able to tap into funds. Currently, we have our accounts are in, our money's in a separate checking account, and then we are also part of LAIF, which is Local Agency Investment Fund. And currently, when we request funds from them, it is a couple-day turnaround, or it can sometimes be more. This would also allow us to have a little more liquidity to be able to access the funds that we currently have. So this time, we are recommending that you allow an authorization for the city to sign up to join the Yuba County Investment Pool. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Questions?
Question.
What's our, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, the, on the notes, on the staff report, it said that generally the pool outperforms the LAIF rates?
That is true. So historically, if we look at the yield that the county has compared to LAIF, the yield is higher. There is, every often on there'll be the one-off month or quarter, but I've seen several of the charts. Dan, I can't pronounce his last name too, he has a difficult one like me, thank you, has presented me with information on the pool, with their yields that they have, with the investments that they contribute to, and you can see on their graphs over a long period of time that it does out-yield LAIF. Like I said, almost every, I think there's one quarter I saw in the past 3 years that was lower than LAIF was at the time.
Do you remember a current rate, an example of a rate?
I want to say somewhere between 2 and 3%, but don't exactly quote me. I mean, obviously with interest rates for any kind of investment, they are low. And they're also like this, in the city, in the pool, they also have to conform to the California government code. So there's certain risks that we can't go into, that they also cannot go into. So we're not putting our money in, I can't think of an investment off the top of my head, something that proves it's really high, we're going to get you all this money really fast, and then they can't perform it. So there still has to be a safety element to everything that they invest in. So they, again, also follow the California code, which also provides security to it. You may not have the quick, fast yields, but the cities and the counties and the agencies that are involved, we need safety, we need liquidity. That's more important for us because we need to protect our taxpayers' money. We can't gamble with our money, so this provides that protection, but also allows us to produce a yield that we probably wouldn't be able to, if we just put it in a savings account, is obviously not going to be able to access. Or you put it in a CD, you've locked it away for some time period. We need access to the funding just depending, because as we were talking about with the budget, our cash flow is it's our reserves, it's our cash flow. So as time goes up and down, we need to be able to access that at any time. And this also allows us that opportunity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Through the chair.
Hold on, Mr. Bartololi.
Yeah, I'm a little confused, so I need a little explanation.
That's okay.
So what actually is our participation of funds?
0 right now.
Right now,
No, I know. What will it be? I mean, are we,
we're not committed to any amount. We have spoken with the county.
okay.
And we're not, they don't say you have to give us $1 million to join, or you have to give us $2 million, or you have to give us $20. They really said it's whatever you're comfortable with. We want a partnership with you. We look forward to working with you. So anything that you're comfortable with bringing to us as part of their investment pool is fine with them. There's not a set, you have to do an X amount of dollars.
Do we have some kind of number in mind of how we'll participate?
So I would just, before I answer that, just want to add to that, that we want to internally do kind of an evaluation and assessment of what we think is a comfortable amount of money to put into, because obviously we're not going to take everything out of LAIF, which is a state fund, and put it all into, even though, you know, it's tempting because it is performing generally better. But I think, as anybody knows, it's better to diversify your portfolio. And so we're going to continue to keep a chunk in LAIF and put a smaller amount, at least to begin with, in the county pool. We were thinking somewhere between $50,000 and $250,000 after we've done, like I said, more formal evaluation of, you know, what do we have and what's our cash flow look like monthly. We haven't been able, had a chance, I mean, we just did the budget, to look at like projections and sort of evaluate how quickly do we need money, how fast do we need liquidity, what kind of a cash flow do we need to have, and so therefore how much could we afford to put here versus our other accounts.
Okay, I still just need a little more clarification in the sense that, is that our general fund money?
Yes, it is, in essence, yeah. It's part of the starting fund balance slash cash flow slash reserve, which is all the same
So-
thing, which is general fund money.
Okay, so, basically, we're sticking a portion of our checkbook in there. And it's always accessible back
Correct.
That's correct.
at any time.
Yes.
Okay.
Through the chair, wasn't there like a 4-day lag on that, or was that on the other proposal?
There's a lag when it comes to LAIF.
Okay, okay. So with this one, it's accessible a little more.
I mean, within reason. I mean, they still have to be able to issue us the funding.
Check.
I mean, you still have to be able to contact them and say, hey, we want to take this out.
Sure.
It's not like we don't get a debit card that we can immediately
I get it, okay,
access,
okay.
correct?
Thank you.
But yes, it's very liquided. Has a high liquidity when it comes to the investment.
One quick,
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill.
You talked about the state program, the LEAF program. Why would we not want to take that out of a higher interest, less interest-bearing account and put it in one that has a higher interest rate return? First question. And secondly, are we contemplating looking at our reserve and putting that in? Would that be a contribution? And the reason I ask that, it seems like that'd be a very safe place to put our reserve, since we can pull it out whenever we need it. And then you said that we have additional benefits with by short-term bridge loan financing. If we have our reserve in there, that's what that's for. That's not a general fund, starting fund balance. That's supposed to be set aside.
Correct, but since our reserve is our cash flow, we already have pretty well established in our general checking account of how much cash flow that we need on a fairly regular basis. So
Our reserve is our cash flow. That's a designated account for specific emergencies.
we don't have, when we put money in LAIF that's in there, it was
Yeah.
never designated as this is our savings
Okay,
account.
LEAF now, we're talking about that.
Correct.
Okay.
It was, but obviously this has been in here much longer than I've been in this position.
Yeah.
And I never have seen any paperwork or anything in my investigation about this account that it was set aside as a quote savings account. It was always another way to diversify our portfolio, and then knowing if we needed to access that we could. And on the flip side of that, we have had some times where we've had an excess in our checking account and we've transferred it back into LAIF. So it's not just put a whole bunch of money in there, take. It's, we know we can manage our cash flow we currently have, and then we would transfer it in to get the higher yield. Plus, since we haven't had a finance director for quite some time, we haven't actually had somebody to start watching the ins and outs of these accounts to be able to provide what is the best way for us to use our money, to invest our money. And that's also part of the investment policy in this, with joining the pool, is to start working on actually having someone watch our investments and to watch our cash instead of just putting it in a checking account and leaving it alone. We haven't had that. We haven't had that for years.
And it's safe in there.
Correct.
And it's probably, but I don't know why we would have part of, like the city manager said, to diversify portfolio, but when you get a better interest rate in diversifying and put it into a county safe treasury, that's pretty secure. So I'm not telling you how you do your job.
Correct.
When you bring it back, those are some of the questions I probably will be answering.
Okay.
Why we're not putting all the reserve in there as part of our donation, if you will.
And that's also part of doing the long-term forecasting.
Yes.
That we need to start doing in this position that has not been done. So that's part of bringing to you the quarterly investment reports and letting you know where the cash stands, what it's been earning, so that we can start looking at that. But since that hasn't been done, I don't want to jump in with both feet and say, oh, we're going to change the whole layout when it has been working. It may not have been the most efficient for the city, but we need to build up that efficiency over time to make sure that we're, viewing everything accordingly instead of just putting all of our eggs in one basket.
My experience is I don't think we've ever drawn out money from that state fund.
From LAIF?
Yeah.
We have taken money out of LAIF.
When we take it out? What do we take it out for? Anyway, that's the.
No, cash flows. It really has come down to, we would have payroll or another item, and we've paid some large bills out, and we hadn't gotten the money from the county. And so we have to pull it out to be able to cover that, and then when money comes in from the county, again, for property taxes or even sales tax, and we see we have enough for our cash flow, then we have put it back in.
Well, I'm sure you guys will bring a good program forward when you bring it back to city council.
Correct. It's just
I was
we're,
reading that, those are some of the things that popped in my head. Why are we keeping our reserve over here in the account that pays X number interest? And when we can.
and we haven't had another option in the future or in the past too, so that's part of
Well, we had,
it.
because I've been on this now for almost
Oh,
2
okay.
years.
So
So I'm glad to see it's coming to fruition. I don't know why we haven't been doing it before, but maybe we didn't have the money to do it. I don't know.
Or it wasn't
Well,
And that's true, our investment policy was not really clear on joining county pools. It did state in there, but it said if your
Yeah.
county pool had this type of investment, then you couldn't join. And so when I looked at the Yuba County pool, they actually had that type of an investment, dated policy. So by reviewing the current California code that we had, we found out we can do it because it does conform to the current code, but the current policy that we had actually outdated and said that we could not. So that's why we had to bring it back, the investment policy, because it contradicted. So when I was doing the research, I found the contradictions. So it's just
thank you so much.
continually to clean up so that we can improve.
I'm playing with you. Good job.
That's okay.
Is this something that we would try to build up and contribute to every year?
We could.
I mean, there's an advantage to us. The more we have, the more we can
The yield's going to be the same.
possibly borrow back or use back.
I think with that would be something we'll have to evaluate over the next year as we work with the county, and then we also see who else is within the investment pool to build those relationships. Because it's not only the relationships within the pool, it's the fact that we're all in the same pool together, then we can start working with other communities and or agencies that we may or may not currently be working with. So it starts to open up the doors because you say, okay, we now have, I believe I was in my staff report, or maybe I did not put it. Okay, so there's at least 40. Last time they did an update, there was at least 40 unique entities, agencies, counties that were involved. So that opens us up to be able to
Gotcha.
work with, a variety of people that we have not in the past.
Will there be, other than just the connections, us contributing more every year, the advantage to that is just going to be the investment, not just be, but I would say the investment return.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Any other questions? How is the pool governed? Who makes the decision on where the investments are made?
So it's overall, it's the Board of Supervisors, but it's they've entrusted it with the county treasurer, which is Dan.
Mirza.
Thank you. So he's
the administrator, but
he's
who governs it? The
I believe
supervisors?
it is the Yuba County Board of Supervisors.
Yes, it
because
is.
that's designated under the laws, the government code of the
So
state
the
of
other
California.
entities that have large investments in there don't have a vote on where the investments?
Correct.
It's just guided by the state requirements of what things
Correct.
can be
Everything is
invested?
guided by state requirements. They can't come in and say, hey, we found this great investment over here,
Cannabis.
we want you to put it into. If it doesn't fall within the state codes, which are very particular, we're all under the same, the code, it's just the county has a little bit, they're in a different section
But
than
there
we
is
are.
a bit of a difference because someone's getting a different yield, meaning even, the combination of their investments could be a little bit different here and there as long as they stay within the same box.
Correct.
So Leaf has a different investment,
Investment pool that they put into.
Correct.
Because one of the ones I found is investing in commercial paper. Obviously, the city is not going to go out and start investing in commercial paper, but it is allowed in the current government code that in these types of pools or investment that we can. So Dan is looking at that and the county is overseeing it to say, okay, what is obviously safe, but then what's also is providing liquidity for us and what's providing a higher yield. So obviously the city doesn't have time or probably the finances to hire an investor who's going to look at every single thing as it comes up for us. So they're doing the same thing for us. They're looking at it as a broader view, so that it allows us to look at a broader view without us actually having to pay for an investment advisor, which is actually in the policy that we just passed, that we can use an investment advisor. But it allows them to look at where the diversification is and not up to the city to find that,
because I imagine they have to keep some cash available for when the entities need it, right? Because they're going to have to
Correct.
go and sell whatever paper they sold somewhere else, right?
And I want to say that the amount in the pool, last time he gave me a slideshow on it, was around $478 million.
But it's distributed how? Like some is more liquid than others.
Correct, there would be that. And he has given me some of the detail, but I didn't bring that all up with me on how exactly it's diversified. And that is, they do give us quarterly reports on exactly where they have the money at. So it's not that we get it and they say, oh, you earned X amount of dollars. They're going to provide us with, yes, you did earn X amount, but here's what we're doing with your money.
I guess it's just, we don't get too much in the weeds, but one of the benefits is that we'll be able to leverage, some loans, right? I mean, we'll be able to to borrow some from them, right? Like
That is a possibility that we could contact them about, correct?
correct, so that's another benefit.
But we have to have our foot in the door to be able to do that.
You can't do that with LAIF. You can't take out a loan from LAIF. That's just purely savings. So this is an option in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up on that, Mayor, if I might. Sure. I think the Yuba County exercised their rights on that. They took their road tax, gas tax money, and they were gonna do 60 miles of roads. And they went in and secured a loan from this to do 70 miles at lower interest rates. So they're going to be doing 70 miles of road construction based upon their participation in this program in the water agency.
But
And
see, that scares me, because they're putting tons of money into roads, and they have to pay a bond back, and then that bond is not liquid anymore. And so that money gets tied up in those loans. And so if the county, for some reason, doesn't pay off that loan, then there's a risk associated with that fund.
Well, they guarantee the payback, Mayor, by the tax
Well,
revenue they're getting on their road
Yeah,
tax.
but I mean, I think there is a risk.
Well, there's a risk in everything.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's not like old Rosie, that they have all the money in
Oh,
the
no,
world.
I know there's no Santa Claus.
And that there's no risk in us putting money in there.
But our
Correct, I
risk
mean-
is we don't have the money to repair our roads with what we're getting. That's our risk.
And if any
Just a
time we
thought.
feel like it's not a good investment for us, we can pull it out. We're not committed to keeping funds in there.
Right.
So there is the liquidity in that we can always just pull it right back out and put it in something else that we feel is better for the funds for the city.
Yeah, those loans have to be paid back.
Correct.
As long as they're being paid back, then there's a return. But if something happens to the economy, the county or whoever borrowed that money cannot pay that money back, now all the pool investments are in danger, because they have to kind of cover that loss.
But they also would have certain guidelines and restrictions built in that only so many, I don't have the dollar amounts, almost only
Correct.
so much can be put in at one time. They wouldn't leverage an entire pool
Yes,
for that.
correct.
Yeah, I think they leverage through the chair. I think they leverage what their tax base is going to be. Like ours is 400,000, I think, whatever it is. That's what they leveraged against that. And so when they put the RFP out, it came in cheaper, so they got to do 60 miles, and you
I
do
think we're
70.
talking two different things.
No, I'm talking about the loans.
Yeah, no,
I'm
well,
not talking two different things, Mayor. I'm talking exactly how they leverage this account to do what we would like to do with our roads. So
The
anyway,
other part with that, though, is obviously all the funds for the county is within this pool.
yes,
We are not obviously in that position.
we're not there yet.
For us to put all of our funds in there, they would actually need to do our AP, our AR, a lot of our processes, because I did ask that question about how much we could put in and what's the limits. And obviously, as a city, we're not going to be turning around, putting all of our money into the county and saying, okay, you guys can now administer it. So obviously, there's also a cap on how much we wouldn't want to put everything that we have in there, because then they would be required to manage our funds for us in that way,
Understand that?
which again takes away from the liquidity issue for us.
any other questions?
I got two quick.
Okay.
You said there is a cost to participate?
There's not.
Oh, I thought you said there was.
That was what I was also highlighting, is there is no fee to be in it,
cost to
correct?
participate, okay. And then, through other discussions, one of the possibilities I understood was that going back to this loan and road money, that we could borrow from it, possibly borrow from it, and make the payments back with our SB1 money? Our yearly money from that, is that correct?
My understanding is that the state is now permitting that up to 10 years worth of SB1 monies. They weren't originally when it passed. They were not going to allow cities to bond and/or take loans, but they are now. And that's a recent development.
Okay, thank you.
So we could do the whole city of Marysville.
Any other questions? Any public input on this matter? Seeing none, if there's no further comments, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 29-1935.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0. Let's move to Section 10, Committee Reports. No committee reports?
I guess I got one with
Okay.
the LAFCO.
Yes.
Yeah, so LAFCO had a workshop a couple weeks ago on trying to work out the idea of possibly consolidation of all the cemetery districts within Yuba County. There's 9 of them. And it was eventful with a lot of different thought processes and so forth. I like the idea of being able to help out the smaller districts that truthfully don't have the revenue to be able to even pay their taxes. But as of right now, we've stayed it for another 6 months, and we'll see what happens after that. It's a good segue to be able to help out with the possible consolidation of many things within the county. So I hope it works out in the long run.
Thank you. Any other committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move to section 11, council correspondence. I did receive a letter from Ms. Yee in Sacramento about, it was CC'd to me and was given to our fiscal director about some audits that they made. And I'll bring it back to our fiscal director and ask her specific questions about the audit that they made and some of the concerns, not concerns, but some of the findings that they had. And then if you can maybe bring that back to us, kind of describe what the findings were and what a resolution, what we reported out on it. You don't have to do it today, but if maybe next couple meetings.
Can I just clarify, was it CDBG or maintenance of effort for SB1? Does either?
CDBG.
Okay.
Well, I have it downstairs. I can show it to you. Okay. Well, there was one. There was that one as well. This SB1, but that's been corrected.
Yep.
That's my understanding. But I did receive another audit that the treasurer did.
Is the street annual report?
No.
Oh, see, okay.
There's another report that came from the treasurer that they did an audit to us, and then they had some findings, and then we responded to them. But I wasn't clear on what our response was to them. So I'll show you what the report was from there, and if you can provide some information to the council and the public on that. Thank you. Sorry about that. Any city managers report?
Just one really quickly. This morning, the Yuba County Board of Supervisors did approve allocating $25,000 to the city towards special event support at their board meeting this morning. And Chief Sachs was, sorry, say that? Oh, last week, I apologize. It was last week, it wasn't this morning. And Chief Sachs was there present to speak on behalf of the city. Thank you.
Any other city managers report? Seeing none, the council comments. Mr. Buttercaboli?
The only thing I'd like to say is to thank Brad and Mark from Yuba City for putting together in such a hurry this fireworks project, which I think is going to be an amazing event for Marysville. So I just want to let you know how much I appreciate the work you guys have put into it.
Thank you.
Great job, young man. You did good. There was a lot of hurdles to come over to get that done, and I think your tenacity and your leadership did a good job on that. And everybody's excited about the fireworks, so I'm glad you're on the Parks and Recreation Committee to make things happen.
Thank you. Any other comments, Mr. Simmons?
Yeah, I'm going to bring back to the City Council on the next agenda about a report that I received from the lawyer concerning the types of we had a meeting concerning communication and working together as a team, and this is no reflective on anyone, but I think we need to make sure that communication is embedded into the ordinance, and making sure that the city manager has the authority under the charter to hire anyone that she feels she needs to have. Not say the position has, but I think that also should be communicated to the city council. And you guys got a letter from the city attorney saying there's 2 actions we can take. I'm going to bring that back for a vote to see if we can instill, not so much for this council and this manager, but future managers. So it's etched in granite, and no one's saying that the city manager does not have the authority to hire. her staff. That's not what we're after. The only thing we're after is that I'm after is to communicate that before the fact. And so we'll understand what's going on. She doesn't have to have our authority to do it. But there is a conflict in the charter that says the city council will appoint staff, subordinate staff, and right below that it says the city manager will hire directors. So there is a conflict there, and Brandt is working on that to find out which way we're going to go. Apparently when they did the charter change, they forgot to amend that. That's my interpretation, but there is 2 ordinances on the charter, and to change it we have to go back to the public. So and I want to bring that back, get it on the agenda for us to discuss and see which way we want to go with that. Also, before Mr. Bermudez left, we were working with him to put a parking lot off of Biz Johnson Drive, and Brad and I had lunch with him before he left, and he was talking about how to do this. And we were talking about putting the T-bars across there to prevent traffic from going down the riverbank, but yet have a parking spot where they can walk down to the river. And he was recommended we put a chain, was it a chain or whatever?
That's what I heard him say, yeah.
So we'll come back, and I'm hoping that the recommendation from the Parking and Traffic Committee is that we do that. So we'll open up the access to the Yuba River for people to go down and facilitate their fishing and picnicking off of that Buzz Johnson Drive. So I'll be bringing that back too for your consideration. Bruce and I agree with that. And I'm not speaking for Bruce other than the fact he's on the committee with me. We can see if we can open up a little bit of that for people to walk down and be able to fish, and whatever the case may be. Right now, they're getting tickets for it because the ordinance says you can't park off the asphalt. Well, we'll park off the asphalt at soccer fields, so we can do the same thing there to facilitate that opportunity for people to participate. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll start with the Vice Mayor and then go back to Mr. Hudson.
Yes, also want to say great job on the fireworks. I'm excited. I know lots of people are. So thank you very much. And I just wanted to say today I headed out for a walk in my neighborhood, but I noticed that the Levy Commission had their fire truck pulled out, and I had never been. I walk by there all the time, had never met anybody who works there or seen inside or anything like that. So I got my little history tour of the Levy Commission building and all the things there. But what I wanted to let Ms. Riley know that they have some of the books, you know, some of the old historic record books that you had on display at the City Hall crawl. He has some in there. And so I said, oh, you should let Persephone know so that she can get those scanned with the rest of the books. So he's got some really interesting things over there. And I should say, thank you so much for the Saturday. The City Hall crawl was really a great event. And I was just so proud of what we have to show off. And the Public Works yard looks great with everything organized and in place. And I think the people who came out had a great time. And it would have been nice to see more people, but next year, if we do it again, I'm sure we'll have a greater turnout. And the fire department was full of happy kids and families, and over here at City Hall, you know, people are enjoying looking at all the displays. So thank you very much for putting that on. I think it was a great offering for our community to be able to come and see what their tax dollars are doing right here, and you guys are doing an awesome job, so thank you very much.
Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, thank you for your guys' support on this council with the fireworks project and so forth, but it has been an interesting little venture, and I really want to thank pretty much the staff. I mean, Marty and Jen finding the money, and then, you know, Marty letting Chief Sachs and Chief Carlin and Ken Alameda help me out with just getting these things ready. I mean, there was a lot of work on their behalf in those departments, as well as Frank from the Levy Commission to actually burn the levees. Thank you, Frank. And kind of go from there. So it has been an interesting exercise, and yes, it's been short but busy couple weeks here to try and make this happen. And I'm quite pleased that with my counterpart Mark Boomgarden and Yuba City Council that we were able to make all this work so far. Hopefully, it goes off without too many more hiccups, because there's been quite a few hiccups here and there. I myself have learned a few things about pyrotechnics that I thought I knew a lot about, but it was just a little transparency here is when we originally started this project, we were looking for the fireworks that go the highest in the air, which was 6-inch mortars. But in my plan, I decided to only spend $25,000 on this project instead of $30,000, which is what we originally were talking about. And I did not know that a reduction of $5,000 meant that we have a reduction in mortar size. So we're only going to have 5-inch mortars shooting 500 feet into the air. And by the time I realized that, in many conversations, it was too late. Our package was already packed and sent to us. So I know that I originally told everybody that we were going to have fireworks going 600 feet into the air. It's only going to be 500 feet.
You're a failure.
You know what? I'm good with that, man. You know, if somebody else wants to pick up this project next year, we're good. But
Absolutely.
so it's been an interesting process, but the show will start promptly at 9:30 on Thursday. It will last for 18 minutes. We are not going to have any music synced with it because that's an extra cost to have them choreograph the music with this. So it is going to be done with manual ignition by our shooter/ignition board person, and he's going to try and sync it with music that he'll be listened to on the radio by our local music station. But there's going to be a slight delay with that. It's going to be a good show. Riverfront Park. Like many of you know, the park will be unlocked at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm still trying to find keys to a bathroom so I can at least make sure there's products inside of there. But that has to do with the soccer league. I'm working on with that. Ken is going to let me use all the barricades for the safety precautions. Minimum of 300-foot circumference is required for 5-inch mortars. I'm going to extend that border to over 420 feet out from the ignition site just to give us a little bit of buffer. When doing so, I'm going to make a little exclusion zone for sponsors and city staff and families if they want to come down there and park and sit in this little area we're going to do. So we'll have a front row seat to be able to watch the fireworks launched. But with that said, is that you can come park anytime in this area, but you will probably be the last to get out of the park at the particular, because it's only one way in, one way out at this particular time. I was not able to unlock the extra exit that is being blocked by construction zone right now. So hopefully it's a great show. Hopefully we don't have any mentally deficient individuals screwing this up for us. I'm trying to find a better way to put that, sorry.
Good job.
Well, thank you. I was gonna say, it was really, really great stuff, but I was gonna add to it, but we'll just leave it at that. Thank you for your work, sir, and thank you for staff for supporting the efforts of
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Hudson. I really don't have anything to say. It's like, have a safe 4th of July, everyone. It's time for, celebrate our country's birth and spend time with our family. And let's do it safely, and let's do it, let's support this mutual fireworks things that's being done by everyone, and everyone's contributing. So I hope, I've heard a lot of good things. People want to show up, and people have plans on where they're going to be. So I think it's going to be a great turnout. So great job. Baseball again. I have tickets that the Gold Sox gave us, and I kept forgetting to give them to Miss Brown, but they still have about 3 or 4 weeks left. So ask Marty. I should be giving it to her like
Yes, you
a month
should.
ago or something.
I've asked you for those tickets a couple times, but you keep forgetting them.
Anyway, they're going unused, so they're there for all the games.
Reach out to you if
Yeah,
all of us.
exactly.
Staff, okay.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna give them to you.
Okay, got it.
I just
I'll
keep
let them know.
forgetting that. But go to the Gold Sox game either way. tomorrow's fireworks, the 3rd, I believe, at the Gold Sox as well.
Yes.
We had a couple fires, 2 days in a row. We've had 2 fires, and both of them, I think, in my mind, could have been prevented. In a sense that those places probably are not. They probably have a lot of code violations, or have had a lot of code violations, and they're probably. So thank you for the firefighters on maintaining them, keeping those from other businesses. But I do appreciate. I know there's been a really dedicated effort and code enforcement and trying to mitigate some of those issues through code enforcement and other legal matters. So thank you for that, and thank you for being there for the public. I'm really upset at the one today because they know better. I mean, the owners we've had multiple discussions with that particular owner, multiple contacts, and they've said that they were going to do certain things, and this is the outcome. We have to use, public resources to be able to maintain that today. Luckily, it didn't go anywhere, and you guys were able to kind of take care of it. But again, in my mind, those things could have been prevented. So I think we need to put pressures, more pressure on these type of landlords, and I know that staff have a plan, and I know they put a lot of pressure, but we have to support staff when they're putting pressure. So if we're getting call from these landlords, we have to make sure that we understand that this is a public safety issue, and that's why they're putting pressure on us. It's not just because we're being mean to them, but it really signals of some of the people have gotten away with a lot of things, and we hope that we can support staff when it comes to these things. With that, let's, I think we're going to closed session. Closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with Labor Negotiator Marty Brown regarding the following bargaining units: Teamster Marysville Police Officer Association, sworn and non-sworn, and the Marysville Fire Association. Action may include approval of a side letter amending the memorandum of understanding between the City of Marysville and the aforementioned employee organization bargaining units.
Served him, he's filed a response saying, I ran for governor. I told you that I ran for governor. I've been in the military, and I got an eviction, and you won't arrest the trespassers. Are you running?
Who's running for governor?
We're talking about running for public office doesn't exempt you.
Clock, good job. You guys want to spend more time in there? So after discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve a side letter amending the memorandum of understanding between the City of Marysville and the aforementioned employee organization bargaining units.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Hudson, is there a second? Second. Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0. Now I would like to adjourn to the regular meeting of the City Council of July 16, 2019 at 6 p.m.